Now, I really like this Naya Hexproof deck that Chris Sanchez is playing. And we're seeing one of my favorite cards right now, Gorkalion Rampager, just doing some work.
So it appears we have an attacking Witch Stalker.
Golgari Charm. So it looks like we are in a post-board matchup. Justin Uppal does have 3 Golgari Charms in his sideboard, which seem to be, very good when playing against a deck focused on putting pants on something that you can't target.
So from the looks of things here, it looks like Justin is taking away Chris's ability to have first strike by destroying the Ethereal Armor, and then is using the Death Touch power on Reaper of the Wilds. We will get confirmation of all of this momentarily. But Naya Hexproof has kind of been having a breakout in this tournament.
It definitely has. Now, it's interesting to see here that Chris Sanchez does have a Boros Charm in his hand, and he doesn't have another white source. Otherwise, he would have been able to give his permanence indestructibility and saved that Ethereal Armor from the Golgari Charm, which isn't something that you would think that you would see very often. But in a deck like this, sometimes you have to use every part of the Buffalo.
Yeah. And it looks like there was a Death Touch related trade here. And now
Juppal's going to scry and keep the Reaper on top. That is, we can see from the Courser.
Uppal plays a Temple off of his Courser, gains a life, scries to the bottom. That
scry should have been revealed from the Courser.
Yeah.
Which is something that isn't 100% intuitive, that a lot of people don't realize. So when you're scrying, you're looking at the top card, but it is still revealed by the Courser of Kruphix.
And that's a marginal thing anyway. Whatever card went to the bottom doesn't impact things much. But
yeah,
Courser, people are still learning about how to play with Courser. There's some weirdness in the top card of your deck and manipulating scry and all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah. It's also really interesting with Courser of Kruphix and Shocklands when you're playing the Shockland, is that the choice for untapping it by paying the 2 life is a trigger that it doesn't actually go on the stack, but it's something that you have to make a choice on, but you get to see the top card of your deck before you choose if the land's going to be untapped or not.
So Uppal in a commanding position here. Sanchez takes a draw, and we'll see if he's able to reassemble any sort of creature plus enchantment setup here.
Yeah, it looks like he does have an Unflinching Courage in his hand along with a Boros Charm, but looks like he has all the clothes to get dressed up, but nowhere really to go.
Dreadbore revealed for Uppal. And Uppal's going to go ahead here, turn on Mutavault, and attack with Courser, Elvish Mystic, Mutavault, and Reaper of Wilds.
Sometimes Elvish Mystic has to get his hands a little dirty. He's not always accelerated into Domri. Does get to crash into the red zone. It's interesting that he's choosing to keep up the Hexproof as opposed to just playing out that other Courser of Kruphix in his hand.
It is possible he's concerned about Mizium orders.
Well, Reaper is a 4/5.
No,
he's
just holding something back.
That's true. Now, the other thing that could happen is Chris Sanchez, I imagine, is playing Celestia Charm, and so if Uppal would have been tapped out, there's the possibility of putting something like Unflinching Courage on the Reaper of the Wilds, and then using Celestia Charm to exile it because its power would be over 5.
Mutavault off the top. Uppal gains another life, reveals a forest on the top of his deck. Uppal sends in the same squad from last turn, and Sanchez kind of forced into chump blocking detail here, and he's just going to concede here. So we're going to be going to game 3 here momentarily between Chris Sanchez and Justin Uppal. So you have Justin Uppal playing Jund Monsters. You have his sideboard in front of you. What are we looking at here?
Well, definitely I imagine he has the 2 Abrupt Decays in and the 3 Golgari Charms. I don't think that he's going to bring in Ultimate Price, since the creatures that he can expect out of Chris's deck either have Hexproof or are gold. So I don't imagine that he has the Ultimate Price or the rest of the cards from his sideboard. So I think that we're just looking at the Charms and the Abrupt Decays coming in.
And on Chris Sanchez's side, we have 3 Glare of Heresy, 2 Fiendslayer Paladin, 2 Mending Touch, 4 Skylasher, 3 Mizium Orders, and a Ratchet Bomb. I think Fiendslayer Paladin is reasonable here, as is Mending Touch. Mending Touch is not necessarily meant for this matchup. It's more of an anti-Supreme Verdict measure, but Justin does have a fair amount of removal in his deck, so potentially he wants to go there as well. But in my mind, the Naya Hexproof deck basically has a couple flex slots for each matchup, where either Boros Charm isn't well suited because there isn't removal, or Chain of the Rocks isn't that useful because there's just not many creatures in the opposing deck. So it feels like usually one or the other is coming out to make room for a couple of changes around the edges.
I definitely agree, and because of that, I'm actually surprised to see that Chris still had Boros Charm in his deck in that second game. But from the way we saw Justin Uppal, taking control of the game with that Golgari Charm on the ethereal armor that was on that Witch Stalker, it could be that Chris foresaw that and wanted to use the Boros Charms as a way to save his enchantments.
Yeah, and Boros Charm just has really high raw power. I mean, it's a powerful Magic card. A lot of people, I'm of the philosophy with Boros Charm where when I'm playing against other creature decks, for example, I'm usually not a big fan of having Boros Charm in my deck because it's not really well suited to winning a lot of creature-on-creature battles. You can set up big indestructible turns, but it's not the most efficient measure. I know a lot of Magic players who feel that Boros Charm is just almost too good to ever cut in most matchups.
I definitely love Boros Charm. For a while early on in the season, I was a big proponent of the Boros aggro deck that Ben Lundquist won an open with. And I really liked Boros Charm even in matchups like against mono blue. So there's not a whole lot that you're going to be doing with it there, but it's just like another Brave the Elements where you're able to crash into their team with a lot of attackers. They set up what they think is a favorable block. You get to use Boros Charm, kill a couple of their guys and get in some damage, and it just puts them in a very bad place because that type of deck isn't going to catch up very well. They have to accumulate their advantage over a few turns.
Yeah, and if nothing else, Sanchez, like we noted, doesn't really have a lot of haymakers for this matchup. The sideboard's not really well equipped here, so not unreasonable for him to just leave Boros Charm in lieu of going to his sideboard and bringing in some kind of inefficient options.
That's true. And just like in the Green Red Monsters mirror match, Gorklan Rampager is a very powerful card, and Fleshblood is also very good at being able to finish your opponent, and Rampager plus Boros Charm is going to be just as powerful against this Jund deck as it would be in the Green Red mirror.
Trying to set up some combo kills here as we are almost ready to start the third game. Chris, having lost game 2, will be on the play. Very important, in most constructed formats, and particularly in a hexproof versus removal spell mirror match.
I'm actually really excited from the two matches that we're seeing here, with the mono red winning, being able to double draw in with his 12-card sideboard, to this innovative Naya hexproof deck that Chris Sanchez is playing. We've come a long way from last week in St. Louis, where we had like 5 different versions of monsters in the top 8.
And a month prior to that where it was mono blue versus mono black versus blue white as our metagame. So
one thing I'd like to notice is we're not seeing a lot of Thoughtseize. So Thoughtseize has been a controversial card. It's obviously very powerful. It's very unfun to play against, and all of these decks are just building themselves to be immune to Thoughtseize. You're playing Rakdos Cackler, go ahead and Thoughtseize me. I'm playing, these Witch Stalker decks, go ahead and Thoughtseize me. I have all the pieces already. I definitely like seeing Thoughtseize not be very oppressive.
Yep, as we see, both players keep 7 here, and Sanchez lead off with a Temple Garden. A Temple for Justin, setting the card to the bottom.
Temples and temples all around. So it looks like we've got a lot of pants in Chris Sanchez's hand. We're just waiting for a creature to put it on. And he doesn't have one.
Does feel like one of the weaknesses of the Naya hexproof deck is just not that many creatures in it.
It's interesting to see that he doesn't have Fleece Mainline in the deck. Now, I know that we did have a deck tech in the sideboard with Nick Miller. This should be up shortly with Chris Sanchez, and maybe they talk about it there.
So a Blood Crypt and an Elvish Mystic for Justin, and Chris takes the opportunity to make a 2/2 Night token, and now we'll see if he's willing to start pantsing this thing up.
I imagine he has to. Looks like he just has a bunch of Madcap skills and things of the sort in his hand, but it also looks like he drew a Fiendslayer Paladin, which seems like a good target for some pants.
Yeah, very, very solid potential target for some enchantments here.
Looks like Justin Uppal has an Abrupt Decay in his hand, which is going to give him some breathing room if something does start to get out of hand. But once that Fiendslayer Paladin's in play, we're looking at fighting with Domri, fighting with Polykranos, or overloading Amizium Mortars as a way to actually kill it.
Sacred Foundry untapped for Chris.
I imagine we're going to see the Fiendslayer Paladin.
So Fiendslayer Paladin, an attack with a Vigilant Knight, knocks Justin down to 18. Justin untaps. Draws.
Looks like it was a Courser of Crucifix for the turn.
And here is the Courser. Reveals Golgari Charm.
It's going to be another way to kill Troublesome Enchantment.
Another Blood Crypt, and Justin passes the turn back.
Now, there's the potential for a lot of damage this turn from Chris Sanchez with double Madcap skills and an Ethereal Armor in his hand.
Untapped stomping ground for Chris implies a big turn on its way here.
Now, there could be merit with madcapping skills at both of these creatures.
Just diversify a little bit.
Yeah, not only that, but it basically just makes it so that he gets in the maximum amount of damage this turn.
Yep. And you see madcap skills get deployed on the Knight. An Ethereal Armor on Fiendslayer Paladin.
So it looks like he just shocked himself for nothing, since he doesn't have a spell that he can cast now.
It did seem like we were going to go double madcap skills, but we've gone a different route here.
I definitely would prefer the madcap skill, since that would just guarantee the most amount of damage. But maybe he just wants to give Justin Uppal the chance to block with that Corsair Crucifix.
And then it appears no blocks from Justin here. So that was an attack for 9. Uppal draws the Golgari Charm, reveals Mutavault to Corsair, plays Mutavault and gains a life. Sylvan Caryatid now on top of Justin's deck.
And that life that Corsair, gains over the course of the game starts to add up pretty quick. So it looks like we do have an Abrupt Decay and a Golgari Charm here, but we are going to Dreadbore the Knight token.
So Knight down, now just Fiendslayer Paladin with Ethereal Armor. Another Ethereal Armor the draw.
So Justin is just basically hoping that there is not a Gorklan Rampager in his future here.
Chris puts a second copy of Ethereal Armor on the Fiendslayer Paladin.
Because they work so well together.
It is a combo.
So it's currently going to be a 6/6. A madcap skills would make it 9 and 11 power creature.
We see an
he's
attack
going to
here.
hold off. I think he's wanted to be able to give his Knight trample with that +2/+2 mode on the charm.
Yeah, Chris Sanchez's hand right now, madcap skills and Selesnya Charm. So Golgari Charm before damage.
Leaves it at 3/3.
Moves to 3/3, and we'll see if Chris uses his Selesnya Charm here. It appears that he will. That moves the Knight up to a 5/5.
Which will crash in for 1 damage.
And when the smoke clears here, Justin should be taking a point and falling to 10.
Now, even if Chris Sanchez doesn't draw anything, he's looking like he's in good shape with that, being able to hold off on that madcap skills.
Yeah, Fiendslayer Paladin is really troubling for this Jud monster set, it looks like. Maybe not on its own because you have Palikronos and other things bigger, but when supplemented by enchantments.
Absolutely. The one thing that we can note here is that Justin hasn't seen a Domri raid. So normally against this Knight Hexproof deck, Domri isn't going to be that good since you're not going to be able to target the majority of their creatures. But in a situation like this, Domri would have broke this game apart.
4 mana and Palikronos. Justin leaving a Blood Crypt and an Elvish Mystic back.
So there's a good chance here that we can see Chris Sanchez just putting that madcap skills on the Fiendslayer Paladin and trying to get in for a lot of damage. But the Abrupt Decay in Justin Uppal's hand is just going to be a pretty big blowout here.
But Sanchez does not bite and just passes the turn back.
Man, he has more discipline than I do. I would have been turning that guy sideways in a heartbeat.
Sylvan Caryatid for Justin. Starting to really develop his mana here.
It's pretty interesting that he decided to cast the Caryatid there, as opposed to waiting for Chris Sanchez's end step and Monstrous seeing the Palikronos for 3 and killing the Fiendslayer Paladin.
And now we see Chain to the Rock taking down Palikronos.
So he didn't cast the madcap skills before combat, so now he gets to Abrupt Decay the Chain to the Rocks and ambush the Fiendslayer Paladin with the Palikronos.
So this is a huge blowout for Uppal here. He's going to unlock his Palikronos from Chain of the Rock, throw a block in front, just eats the Fiendslayer Paladin. Now Sanchez with only madcap skills in hand and Uppal in a commanding position.
Yeah, now it looks like Uppal's going to have enough mana to Monstrous' Palikronos for 3 here and do a lot of damage. Or kill another Fiendslayer Paladin if he needs to.
A big attack here from Uppal with Palikronos, Mutavault, and Elvish Mystic knocks Sanchez down to 20. Sanchez with no creature just plays a land and says go. Uppal moving very quickly now. Makes the same attack. 4/8, knocking Sanchez down to 12.
So I imagine here we're going to see a Monstrous for 3 Oh. Got madcap skills, but I believe Justin Uppal drew Mizzy Mortars for the turn, so that's going to be about all she wrote.
So a Glee cover scout and the madcap skills here from Sanchez, but looks like it will not be enough. Uppal monstrous is his Palachronos, as you mentioned, in a turn. We see an overloaded Mizzy Mortar, 6 mana, taking out the 1 mana creature.
And putting Chris Sanchez at 1.
And a lethal attack, or near lethal attack here.
Voice of Resurgence does not restart the game as much as it would like to.
There's a voice, and now Uppal simply an attack away from ending this.
Still going to go through all the motions.
And that is game. Justin Uppal now 8-0 with Jund Monsters, defeating Chris Sanchez 2 games to 1. Uppal should be in a position now to